It is day 3 of Big Ten Media Days. Michigan is going today, but today we're not going to talk about what Michigan is going to do today. We will leave that for Friday because we've got 2 amazing special guests today. We have On3 Steve Wiltfong, talk a little bit about Michigan recruiting, and we also have Jake Butt. You may know him a little bit as a former Michigan tight end, Mackey Award winner, as well as BTN analyst. So we will talk about all of that here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Thursday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hull, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And I am very proud to welcome On3 Director of Recruiting. Do I have that title correct? I know it's changed.
Look, door opener, whatever you need, man. I'm just here to cover recruiting here. Good to see you at the Big Ten Media Days here. Sorry. Looking at this Michigan class right now, it is a terrific group. Top 10 in the On3 recruiting rankings. When you look at average ranking per commit, that's my favorite metric. This is a talented class that Sherrone Moore and his staff are putting together here. Had a chance to talk to Coach Moore this morning as he is walking back to do some TV, and he just thinks these are a great group of Michigan men. He's not able to publicly comment on these guys until they sign a national letter of intent, but just really emphasize the mental makeup of these guys. And I think that's been the recipe. I think that's why Michigan's been Development U. They do such a good job of finding guys that are hungry, guys that want to be at Michigan, have a lot of pride, wearing that black M on their jersey, and then they're able to maximize those guys' traits because of the DNA, the personalities that those guys have, and the way they love playing football.
Well, Steve, I didn't get a chance to say what one of the things I wanted to mention before we even got into recruiting is that you are one of 2 reasons I'm even in this industry. So a lot of people might not know that, but Steve, you recognize that a lot of the stuff that I do at Sound Mind, Sound Body back in 2015. So thank you for that.
Well, you're the reason why you're in this business. I just saw you out there doing your thing and was damn glad to work with you at 24/7 Sports and excited to see you doing your thing right now.
Well, thank you. So you obviously kind of set up the class as just kind of in a general term as far as what you've seen with Sherrone Moore, but how have you seen any changes? Sherrone Moore being already one of Michigan's avid recruiters over his tenure when he was the tight ends coach, offensive line coach, offensive coordinator. Now he's the head coach. Have you seen kind of any mentality shifts as far as the way Michigan's recruiting right now?
Well, I think that Michigan always recruited well under Coach Harbaugh, the way they put together that championship roster. But with Sherrone Moore, you're getting more consistent recruiting emphasis from the head coach on the trail. It's kind of in his DNA. He's a natural relationship builder, wants to get to know kids and their family. And we talked about that today. He said that he's involved in all the recruitments now for Michigan, and he always wanted to do that and started to even branch out as his role has expanded at Michigan into being the offensive coordinator. So he loves having his handprints on all the recruitments for Michigan, getting to know the defensive players, the guys they're recruiting in the secondary. And so I think that Michigan now, Jim Harbaugh, he was a player's coach. Families would come on campus and they enjoyed spending time with him and conversating with him, and they could tell how much he poured into his football program. But with Sherrone, they're getting more dialogue with him at more times because that's just more Sherrone's personality. He's a younger guy, and so he's more involved with Michigan's top targets.
Now, we have also seen them have kind of a tear, maybe not as much in July as June, but Michigan, one of the lower-ranked teams earlier on in the cycle, where you saw Ohio State, Notre Dame, those teams kind of load up on commitments. But Michigan had a really good June. Kanwa Winston being among them, a couple others that were really highly rated. Who do you look at and say, like, that guy that they got, whether it's in June or maybe even before, like that guy might be actually someone who's going to outplay their ranking?
Well, I think with Michigan, you feel like all the guys can outplay their ranking with the way that they've had their strength and conditioning, the way they scheme these guys into positions to make plays on Saturdays, and the way that they develop these guys athletically. People get bigger, stronger, and faster when they come to Michigan. So when they come back to Lucas Oil Stadium, when they're done on this field, and they test among the best in their position groups, and they get drafted high. And so it's development and Coach Sherrone Moore and this coaching staff looks to keep that going. When I look at this Michigan recruiting staff, you can certainly say they've had some big hits on the defensive line. Nate Marshall is a pivotal recruiting win to get him out of Chicagoland. He's got all the traits to be one of the best players in the Big Ten at one of the most important positions. What they've been able to do in the secondary with Ivan Taylor and Kanoa Winston, those are guys that Michigan's going to have. Those are guys that can be real difference makers in the secondary. You got to be good on the back end to play the kind of defense you want to play. But it always starts at quarterback for me, and it's not necessarily landing the highest ranked guy, but having one of the best players at the position in college football on Saturdays. And Carter Smith is maybe the best dual threat quarterback in the country. He's still developing as a passer, but he is the Florida Gatorade State Player of the Year. At one point, he was one of the best shortstops in the country. He's got pro pedigree. His dad played minor league baseball. He's a big kid that's still developing physically. He can run. I think he's a good decision maker with the football, and he's a guy that I think has as much upside as any at the position in this recruiting class, and I think he can be scary good at Michigan. So Michigan, they get Jaden Davis last year, a proven winner, unflappable player that's played a lot of big downs in his high school career, guy that's had a microscope on him for a long time. The stage is not going to be too big for Jaden Davis at Michigan. I'm excited about him and his future. But he's going to have a hell of a player pushing him in Carter Smith, who I think, again, he's going to be someone that's going to be able to move the chains and take off and run when things break down around him. He's going to be able to extend plays. He's going to be able to break tackles. And so I'm super excited about that pickup for Michigan. And then they got Brady Hart committed in 2026. Again, when you look at some of those teams that Michigan had under Coach Harbaugh that underachieved by Michigan standards, but were still pretty damn good outside of the COVID year by normal people's standards, quarterback play was not of championship caliber. But I think when you look at Jaden Davis and Carter Smith and then Brady Hart, you're getting a quarterback room that's got a chance to be really good.
All right, we're going to continue on with you in just a moment. I want to talk about the upcoming class, right? Because even though we touched on some of those names, Michigan wants to fill out their class. So in just a moment, we're going to finish out talking about the recruiting as far as how Michigan is doing in 2025 with Steve Wiltfong. But before we do, passion, drive, and patience, it's the winning formula is what helps you bring home the championships. But guess what? With your car, eBay Motors can help you do exactly that, because they have everything from tailpipes to I was going to say exhaust kits, but LED headlights, all of that stuff. You can find that at eBay Motors, because you're burning rubber, not cash. So put it to the test, win that championship. Go to ebaymotors.com to get all of your parts, because with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride. So terms and conditions do apply, ebaymotors.com. All right, we're back with Steve Wiltfong, again, the director of recruiting over at On3. Again, do I have that title right? I don't even know if
Hey, look, door opener, whatever they need at On3, I'm that guy. I'm excited to be here. Did 14 years at my previous stop, but super excited about On3 and what we have going. We have some of the best in the industry, guys with proven track records. We have the Wolverine in the Michigan market, been around for a long time. Fantastic site to get your Michigan information. But it's just an exciting time around the Michigan program in general, Isaiah. So thanks for having me on the show. The Sherrone Moore era is off and running. I think they're recruiting well. I'm excited to see what they look like in fall camp here. Coming off a national championship season, but Sherrone Moore is not the offensive coordinator anymore. He's the head coach. Kurt Campbell is now the offensive coordinator. You don't have Coach Jesse Minter, maybe the best coordinator in college football last year. He's off to the NFL. You got Coach Wink in there, the godfather of this defense. Love the swagger and attitude that he's bringing to Michigan. You promote from within with the best strength and conditioning department in the country. But these guys are all new, so they got big shoes to fill all the way around. But I love that they hired from within, and excited to see what Michigan has this year. Best defensive line in the country, right?
No, I would imagine so. And that's one of the things that Jake will talk about later is how a lot of people look at Ohio State and say that might be the best defensive line, yet Michigan's got two guys that are assuredly first-round picks in Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, and some really great outside guys as well, Derek Moore and Josiah Stewart. So
new quarterback, though, but we'll see what happens again as they scheme that in under Coach Kirk Campbell and company. But we talked about it before the break. Love their quarterback recruiting. I think they got some instant impact guys in this class that'll be able to help on the defense next year on the defensive line and in the secondary.
Well, speaking of things kind of coalescing behind the scenes, Michigan might have a contingent here in Indianapolis today, but starting tomorrow, they're going to be having the barbecue at the Big House. What have you heard about how Michigan's going to be targeting, who they're targeting, some of these guys that might be, are going to be on campus? You look at like a Jerome Miles, who was previously committed to Ole Miss, if I'm not mistaken. How do you think that type of event is going to go for Michigan? Are there any names you're hearing that are really intriguing to you?
Yeah, Michigan's looking to add to their receiver room here. Phillip Wright is committed to them from Louisiana. He's a guy that kind of reminds me of Roman Wilson. He's going to be at LSU this weekend, so you're going to have to battle the in-state Tigers to keep him in the fold. That would certainly make me nervous. Ron Bellamy's a Louisiana guy. He's a plus student. Michigan prioritized him way before any other program. So we'll see if that means something when it's time to make the final decision. But Andrew Marsh is on campus. Have an on-3 RPM in favor of the Wolverines for Andrew Marsh coming out of his official in June. He's been to Michigan like 7 or 8 times. He's back for the barbecue. He's committing in August on a special date for him and his family. I like the way that's setting up for Michigan. Jerome Miles, he's a guy that, Texas A&M and Utah, I probably give the advantage to right now, but he's coming to Michigan this weekend, get him back for an official during the fall. Maybe he gets to see a game atmosphere. There's not a place like the Big House, college football. Maybe there's a couple places that you can put in the same sentence, but I've been to the Big House a couple times, and so that's a place that's going to blow someone from Utah away. I can tell you that right now. So you get him back. Special program. Coach Bellamy's doing a good job. We'll see what happens there. The biggest target for Michigan right now is Andrew Babalola, 5-star offensive lineman from Kansas City, or from the state of Kansas, and they're battling Stanford. Oklahoma's in there. Auburn and Missouri are trying, but Michigan's one of the front runners for Andrew Babalola as they try and put together another special offensive line class. Sherrone Moore, Grant Newsome doing a terrific job with Andrew Babalola, and I think he's struggling with his decision going into the official visits. I thought Stanford was the team to beat. Coming out, definitely not sleeping on the Wolverines.
Well, there's a couple other names that, like Babalola was one I was going to ask you about, because that one seems like that went from being Michigan's probably not in it to being something more of a coin flip.
Well, I would never say they were not in it. Just because we are marking a team a leader, he hasn't committed, and he was definitely still going through his process. Michigan's always been in it for Andrew Babalola. He's visited multiple times with his mother. His mom loves Michigan, the environment, certainly what Michigan brings academically, but then what it could bring football-wise. You're talking about Joe Moore Awards, national championships, offensive linemen being drafted. Michigan's got everything that Andrew Babalola is looking for. Stanford's a special, unique place. They do a great job selling that to a person like Andrew Babalola. When you look at these 5 stars, Isaiah, NIL is a factor for every college recruit in some shape or form. Just when does it come up in conversation? Is it something they talk about right away? Is it something they talk about regularly? I bet with Andrew Babalola, he was the last 5-star that anybody had an NIL discussion with. So this is he is a unique blue chipper. Stanford resonates, but he hasn't committed to Stanford. And he is going through his process, and Michigan has given him a lot to think about. Oklahoma, they had Fred Rouse transfer from Stanford to Oklahoma. They're using that as their advantage at that position, and he's looking to play with like-minded guys for a program that checks all his boxes, and I think Michigan does. Doesn't mean he's going to go there, but he could.
Well, Michigan also has that in its pipeline there too, because they got Miles Hinton, who was a former 5-star.
His dad's name's up
this way.
Yeah, it's up this way. Okay,
yeah, right there, right behind us.
Yeah, the Wiltfongs. We sit over there Sundays, and so I'm used to seeing it over here, but I get all turned around in here. But yeah, Chris Hinton's name is up here. and Michigan's done a good job recruiting that family, haven't they?
There's a couple other guys that I really wanted to touch with you on. Nathaniel Owosu-Boateng, like he's a guy that I've talked to throughout his process. He left his Michigan visit saying that was bar none, at least this is what he told me, this is bar none the best visit that I've been on. But it kind of seems like that the shine of that's fallen off a little bit. What can you say about his recruitment as it currently stands?
Well, he's been consistent because that's what he told me too. He said that Michigan official visit was his best visit overall. Then I asked him if Michigan was his leader then, and then he started hedging. I think Michigan's in the top two. You're looking at Michigan and Notre Dame. He does not seem to be in any kind of rush. This is another kid. I mean, his brother won the Buckus Award at Notre Dame as a 3-star recruit. Seasoned. Their family's seasoned through this process, and they're going through their process at their pace. And I don't know what his decision timeline is. He doesn't appear to be in any rush, but he's been to Michigan a few times. Ohio State's still battling. USC's in there, but I think Michigan and Notre Dame are probably in the best shape.
All right, a couple more names for you that I'm wondering what your opinion is. Both of them with the last name Sanders. You got one who's visiting this weekend, one who's not. Jaden Sanders, the cornerback from Kilgore, Texas, is coming to visit for the barbecue at the Big House. DJ Sanders, they really wanted to get on campus. Doesn't look like they are, at least not this weekend. They're hoping for a later one. What can you say about them and how their recruitment stands and Michigan's chances?
Well, DB visiting this weekend, I think they're battling Oklahoma State, and you like the way that typically sets up for Michigan, right? So we'll see what happens this weekend with them getting him on campus for what's going to be a great event, the barbecue at the Big House. And then DJ, depending on who you talk to, Texas A&M or Texas is the leader, but I don't think anyone's sleeping on Michigan there. The Wolverines have done a good job. I think he's got some family ties in Michigan. Is that right, Isaiah?
I haven't heard. That would be
okay. Maybe I'm making it. I make it all up. Who knows? But
I haven't talked to him yet, so I'm not sure.
It all runs together, the recruitments. But he obviously has Michigan in his top 3, and we'll see what happens.
Last one for you, Steve. Is there a name out there that maybe people aren't talking about as much that Michigan fans should pay attention to that's kind of quietly kept Michigan around? Maybe there isn't, but is there anyone that you're kind of hearing about that isn't talked about as much?
Well, I think that you start turning the page to 2026 because Michigan's 2025 class has come together nicely. You have Brady Hart in the fold. He's going to be at the barbecue at the Big House this weekend. He is a tremendous leader. He takes over a Cocoa team that's veteran-laden, leads them to a state championship. They have one of the best high school football coaches in the state, in the region, down there. Coach Schneider, he raves about Brady Hart when I talk to him about his young signal caller. He's going to be there recruiting, and a guy to keep an eye on is Savion Hyder, one of the top running backs in the country in that 2026 cycle. I think Michigan's on the short list with Clemson and Georgia and Ohio State. He's already been there since Tony Alford has moved from Ohio State to Michigan, and he's a Michigan fit. That family's a Michigan fit, and I think he's going to be one of the hot names for the Wolverines in that 2026 cycle.
All right, awesome. Again, On3's Steve Wiltfong. I highly recommend that you go and check out everything he does. He's long been my favorite from even before I was working at 24/7 Sports. And as a subscriber to On3, it's amazing to be able to see your work once again, since a lot of stuff can be paywalled, but it's highly, highly worth the price. So please go subscribe to him. Follow him at Steve Wiltfong on X. But Steve, thank you again for joining.
Thanks, Isaiah. You guys take care.
All right, we'll be right back with Jake Butt to talk a little bit about his role at Big Ten Network, as well as some Michigan things that he's kind of looking at. So stay tuned for that. All right, we are back with yet again another special guest. It's someone that not a lot of you even really know. He's kind of new to the scene, hasn't really been a part of anything. That's Mr. Jake Butt. Jake.
Hey, viewers. I'd like to introduce myself. I am Jake Butt.
Former Michigan tight end, Mackey Award winner. Saw your name up on the screen earlier today even.
Back with the Big Ten Network.
Yeah, and then it wasn't even Big Ten Network, it was Mackey Award winners. And there's Jake
really?
Butt right there.
Oh, nice, okay.
And yet you're over here
there you go.
Broadcasting with the Big Ten.
Michigan might get another one this year.
Yeah.
That's where I'd put my money.
All right, so Jake, Big Ten Network, year 3. How different is it for you? I mean, obviously you had your first rodeo a couple of years ago. This is not your first rodeo anymore. You've done this for a few years now. How exciting is it for you to kind of see this expanded Big Ten and and be a part of it through Big Ten Network?
It's so exciting, and like just to, from my perspective, I'll be selfish for a little bit and talk about myself. You know, when I dealt with the injuries and my career ended early, it was such a great lesson because there's two ways to look at it. There's perspective, and on one end, I could feel sorry for myself. And certainly when I'd meet up with people after I retired, they'd look at the ground and like, oh, like I had died or something. And yet you think about the timing. I retire, I get into the Big Ten Network the same year their lead analyst, James Laurinaitis, gets back into coaching. So my injuries forced me to retire. The lead analyst role is open in my home conference, Big Ten, so I join them. Then year 2, we hear the whispers of USC and UCLA, and then Washington and Oregon come in. And here it is year 3 where I'm hitting my stride. Honestly, from a divine timing standpoint, it's all worked out where, I mean, this is going to be the biggest year in college football history, certainly in Big Ten Network history. And I'm the lucky one that's going to get to call some phenomenal games with big-time brands this fall.
So you've gotten to talk to a lot of people. Obviously, we're about to enter day 3 today, but so Michigan's going today. We haven't heard from them yet.
Right.
But out of the teams that you've seen so far, because you've met up with 12 teams so far out of the 18. Who's impressed you, whether it's a coach or a player? Who do you feel like has been more, maybe surprised you with their demeanor, just kind of their confidence, or anything?
Yeah. I'll just try to give you an answer that's a little less obvious that you may not hear, and I'll start with Rutgers because I'm really falling in love with that team. And you just think about the context, playing in the Big Ten East. Just brutal for Greg Schiano. They gave Michigan everything they could handle. That was a tough game. The final score doesn't show it, but Michigan fans were sweating. That was a tough game late into the second half. They did the same with Ohio State. Every year Rutgers has had to go through Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. That's brutal. Now they don't have to do it. They have a very favorable schedule. And Greg Schiano talks about his program as a developmental program, meaning they're not getting 5 stars that are going to play right away. They got to develop it. And I look at it as, Greg takes these recruits and he plants seeds into the soil. And at 4 years, the tree has grown and is bearing fruit. Now is the time for him to pick because the schedule's extremely favorable. Their 2 deep is loaded with seniors and experienced players. They return the Big Ten's leading rusher in Kyle Monangai, who for some reason we don't talk about. He's extremely underrated. And last year they had a great season with maybe the worst quarterback play in the Big Ten. They should improve. They can't get much worse. So all of a sudden you have a Rutgers team that is a punching bag for Big Ten fans. They like to make fun of Rutgers. Don't make fun of them this year. They'll beat your favorite team.
Now, speaking of favorite teams, Ohio State's one of yours. No, I'm just kidding. No
can't joke about that.
No one's going to say that. Michigan goes today. We saw, you and I, as we were setting up for this, we saw Max Bredesen and Makari Page come up. How cool is it, especially for a guy who, you were a tight end, you were a pass catcher, but you were also an inline blocker.
Yeah.
You don't normally see fullback tight end types. I mean, tight ends, yes, not necessarily fullbacks being representative. What does that say about Michigan and maybe the mentality under Sherrone Moore being kind of the same?
It's a great question. And what you're alluding to is the way Michigan views themselves. By bringing in a fullback, we aren't, what Sherrone is saying is we aren't cute. We aren't gonna tiptoe through the meadows. We're gonna run the ball right at you. And yes, we lost offensive line talent, but a lot of this offensive line is played and is talented. We're going to run the ball right at you and dare you to stop it. And I think one of the more underrated reasons you bring a guy like Max Bredesen in here, Mikey Sainristil is going to have a long NFL career. He's extremely talented, but he meant a lot more to Michigan last year. He was their emotional leader on the field. Leadership is a big reason Michigan has had success. Max Bredesen, I think, can be that emotional leader this year. I think back to the pancake block versus Caleb Downs in the Rose Bowl, which was not holding, ridiculous.
Right.
Those are the type of plays that get the sideline up, that get the rest of the offense up. This is going to be a long, competitive season, especially for Michigan. The schedule is extremely tough. A guy like Max Bredesen is going to bring a ton of value from an emotional standpoint, both blocking people as a fullback, also on special teams too.
All right, so we'll both have to pay Ben for asking about his little brother like he asked us to.
Yeah.
Of course, you played with Ben.
Yes.
So one of the things that I talked to Brad Nessler and Adam Zucker yesterday about from CBS was the fact that Sherrone Moore seems like he's flying under the radar a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think that's accurate? And Zucker said, like, that's actually a good thing, right? That he isn't getting that those first year accolades the same way. Ryan Day was in a similar situation, right?
Yeah.
We got Anthony Herron joining us briefly here.
The beard is always luscious in person, just as much as it looks like in the avatar.
Wherever football is, Anthony Herron will follow. That's just the truth.
That glue.
But anyway, back to Sherrone. Sherrone seems like he's flying under the radar, even though, like, when Ryan Day took over Ohio State, there was this mentality, kind of from a media perspective, that he was as good, maybe even a step up in some ways from Urban Meyer, based off of his interim stint.
Yeah.
You looked at Marcus Freeman. I mean, I remember watching the Ohio State Notre Dame game, his first game in the regular season. Obviously had the bowl loss the year before as the interim coach. But I remember Chris Fowler saying these two damn good football coaches. We didn't know that yet of Marcus Freeman, yet he was given those accolades. It doesn't feel like Sherrone is getting that benefit of the doubt, even though he has some bigger wins on his resume.
Right.
Do you think it's a good thing that he's flying under the radar a little bit, or how do you look at this?
It's a great thing. It's a great thing. You know, the best example is Tom Brady. You should leverage disrespect to your advantage in football. It is great to be pissed off, as long as you have the emotional maturity to control it. It's great to be pissed off. It's great to feel slighted. It's great to have a chip on your shoulder. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, and he still talks about how he's a 6th-round pick, you know? So Michigan's coming off a national championship run in which Sherrone Moore had multiple opportunities to be the acting head coach on Saturday and won in big games. I mean, the decision to run the ball 30-plus straight times versus Penn State, that's a coaching decision. The decision to go for it back-to-back times on 4th and short against Ohio State, that's a coaching decision. Ryan Day decided to punt it at about the 50-yard line. So this isn't, Sherrone has made big-time coaching decisions in the biggest games and has showed he's fearless. So it's great for him to fly under the radar. And you look at the roster, too, they're flying under the radar. Penn State was picked above them here in the media poll. I have to see it. I'm a see it to believe it type guy. I have to see it. Michigan went into their stadium last year and dominated them, and certainly Penn State's talented. But you look at this defense, I keep hearing Ohio State is the best defensive line in college football. I disagree. They're phenomenal. Josiah Stewart, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Derek Moore, those 4 guys, that was the 4 that was on the field for the 4th down stop versus Alabama. In the biggest moment, that was an elite Alabama offensive line, as was Washington. Those 4 were on the field. That's the best defensive line in college football. They talk about Jayshon Barham like he's a 1st-round pick. They think he might be the most talented linebacker to come through mid. That's a big deal. Ernest Hausman is a stud. He's been waiting for his opportunity to be the starter. Will Johnson's the best corner in college football. The defense will keep him in every game. The question is, and I believe they'll be able to run the ball. The offensive line is experienced, and they got a deep running back room. We just have to see what happens if week 1, say it's Alex Orji comes out and plays a phenomenal game. The rest of the Big Ten and the rest of the country is going to be like, oh shit, excuse my French. They got it again. You know what I mean? If he comes out there and even plays like a B+ quarterback, the rest of the conference is going to have to say, oh shit, this Michigan team is going to be damn tough once again.
Awesome, Jake. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It feels like we should do this more often, but you've become busy. I don't know with what, you know. It's
Not much.
You might have a big network job. You maybe just got married.
That's right.
Congratulations. So
as you can see, I really care about my hair. So I took off my ring. I take it off to do my hair every day, and I'm checking out of the hotel. So I took off, did my hair, all good. I walked down to the hotel, and I take my ring off all the time. It's a little small, so I reached down to my hand to grab it, and I said, oh my God, I don't have my ring. I almost left it in the room.
Ooh,
so
that would've been brutal.
Natalie, Alicia, you guys are probably watching this. Love you guys. Won't happen. I won't lose it.
Well, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will be back on Friday to talk about what Michigan's Big Ten Media Day stint was like. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks to Jake Butt. Thank you to Steve Wiltfong. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.